You ask about this idea of reincarnation and the events that seem to support it, such as coincidences, recognition of strangers, and you wonder whether this oneness that is sensed and spoken of is Christ within. You mentioned that people speak of choosing to incarnate in this dimension over and over again, and other such ideas. And how does all this integrate with biblical theology or Christian theology? It is indeed a popular notion that we make those choices from another dimension, and you can see how easily such thinking can turn into satisfying ego or being lost in imagination. You'll notice that quite often people, in speaking of these ideas, like to think of themselves as having been important people in the past, not just anyone, and that it is a very slippery slope to self-satisfying imagination about who we think we are. These are mysteries, of course, that we cannot fully resolve in this dimension. But I think you can taste or sense the resonance, the depth, the gravitas of the deeper idea of coming from God, not being a self-made existences that choose who to be born through, where to be born, and have their own little master plan. Think, for instance, of the saying of God in Jeremiah, "I knew you before you were born." There's a sense here of that eternal mystery so far beyond us and yet so profound in the knowledge of our essential being, that is transcendent of all these other kinds of ideas and aligns us with our source, with a sense of connectedness and of being loved that is nothing less than transformational. This is the kind of resonance I'm speaking of, where a quality of truth, of depth and mystery is so much more powerful than opinions and imaginations. You ask, could it be the case that it is the presence of Christ in all of us throughout time and space that is the oneness to which the non-Christian teachers elude? This is the idea behind the Logos, that which structures and organizes the universe, that which is the mind of the universe, and which connects us to one another in a cosmic mystery. This connectedness is in the very fabric of reality, enlightened by the understanding of this presence of the divine through the manifestation of God in the Logos. You ask, is that Spirit of Christ being recycled in different mini-incarnations so that the fullness of His Godhead can be worked out as Christ returning in the flesh? I would say it is not that simple, because this incarnation, this living the Christ-like, this idea of not I but Christ lives in me, is a process that requires our participation It cannot be just a natural phenomenon. It is the very essence of our free will to choose a certain path, the way, to undergo this process of theosis, as the ancients called it, divinization, God realization, where through our self-awareness, through our inner efforts, through our devotion and reverence, we participate with God in the manifestation of this Christ-like life. So the idea of Christ returning through mini-incarnations, as you say, has some validity to it, but only through the conscious participation and efforts that we bring to it. This is the very purpose of our creation, to mold ourselves into this paradigm of Christ, this revelation of how to live the fullness of life in the presence of God. So one must be careful not to reduce it to a phenomenon, recognizing our role in this co-creation, if you will, in this awakening to who we are called to be.